My name is Randy Sprick, and I have the privilege of being with Dr. Anita Archer, who's also going to co-present with me a bit tonight. Safe and Civil Schools is delighted to be sponsoring this conference, and as you've probably seen from the registration, it's bigger than just Safe and Civil Schools. It's Dr. Bill Jensen, who's in the back of the room, and his wonderful Tough Kid materials. It's Anita Archer with explicit instruction. But Safe and Civil Schools is the sponsoring agency. Myself and my colleagues have been doing this for quite some time now. This is the incredible privilege of being our 17th year here in Oregon, of holding a summer conference. We started 17 years ago before CHAMPS was even out. We were doing training of trainers in foundations, which is our school-wide discipline approach, and interventions, which is material for individual kids. And over the years, things have just grown. I would first of all, they're all busy doing things to try to make all of this work, but I do want to publicly thank the Eugene staff. We're about 100 miles south of here, and the Eugene staff who puts this on is absolutely fabulous in organizing this, and I just owe a great debt to them for making all of this as hopefully seamless as we will hopefully make it for you. I'm the lead developer of the materials, and those materials are Safe and Civil Schools and published by Pacific Northwest Publishing. And what I would like to do with this session this evening is, first of all, give you a little bit of a sense of who is here and the breadth and depth and range of communities that we all serve. And then I want to move from that into a new concept that we're going to be introducing, which you probably saw some signs coming in here of 90%. We're launching a concept of 90% thresholds, that there are certain things that you can look at, which if you are below 90%, you need to work actively on universal prevention and intervention. And if you're above 90%, it doesn't mean you've hit the goal. It means that you can do more targeted and intensive kind of work. So that's sort of where things are headed for the evening, and hopefully will be a good launch to this. Greetings from all of us. We truly are honored to have you here. So let me give you a sense of, you know personally who you are, but just the range. We have 640 participants, the biggest conference that we have ever had, and we are truly honored about that, because many conferences, their numbers are way, way down. And I know that budgets are tight, and your district has to be very, very careful about what things you do with making sure that your taxpayers' dollars are utilized effectively. And we truly consider it a privilege that we are being a part of your efforts at school improvement. We do have, in addition to most people being from the United States, we have one or two people from Canada, we have one person from the Netherlands, and we have, I think, at least 5, maybe 6 or 7 from the country of Qatar in the Middle East. And I did ask, how do you pronounce that? They said, Qatar, Qatar. You'll never get it right anyhow, so any of those would be fine. So the country of Qatar is here and are actively implementing some of our work. Domestically, we have 28 different states represented and the District of Columbia. And the range of those districts within those states is as geographically and culturally different as these. We have Newport Mesa School District from Southern California. We do have some folks from New York City, Ramapo for Children. The other axis, we have the Seminole Nation, Seminole tribes. Where's Seminole? There you go, Seminole. All the way up to a range of districts in Alaska, one of those being Northwest Arctic Borough District. And a big contingent back from Northwest Arctic, and I'm going to talk about them just a little bit and the remarkable things that they have done in only one full year of implementation. But also, we have a lot in between those places. And in fact, I thought I'd take a look at where those lines cross and just see if by any chance we have any individuals here, and please stand if you are from, back up just a little bit, Wichita, Kansas, Wichita Public Schools. Wonderful to have you here. Thank you so, so much. They chartered a plane to come out because it was cheaper to charter a plane for the 130 plus people that we have. I will tell you a little bit more I will tell you a little bit more about their implementation in just a moment, but I can't tell you what an honor it is that, as I said, both geographic diversity, but in terms of the communities that we serve, the cultural diversity that is involved. We have everything from representatives of the Seminole tribes of Florida. We also have back, because they've worked with us for a number of years, Bellevue, Washington. Any of the Bellevue folks here tonight? Okay, I'll talk about them anyhow. Bellevue, Washington, for those of you who do not know the geography of the Pacific Northwest, is where Bill Gates lives. Just giving you a sense of the hood here. And the remarkable thing about the degree to which communities have embraced this work is it works across the range of socioeconomic strata that we might serve. It works across the range of different racial, ethnic groups that we might serve. Because here's the big thing that it's all about. Make your expectations absolutely clear so there are no hidden norms, and be completely respectful when you have to correct violations of those expectations, and be very, very positive and joyful when you're encouraging the positive aspects of those. That's the crux of what this is, and that cuts across socioeconomic strata, and that cuts across the other ranges of communities that we get to serve. I did look at some of the languages that are served in a couple of the Alaskan communities, and Dutch, Spanish, and Arabic, and this is just logged off of the internet. With any luck, it says welcome and greetings. If by chance it says anything about your uncle or your mother or anything else, forgive me. My attempt was to say greetings in a range of the cultures that we do get to serve. Just going a little bit deeper about who we are collectively in this room, and in the folks that can't be with us yet tonight but will be with us for the other parts of the conference. These are the range of states that have one person to 9 people in attendance. So if you don't see your state up there, don't worry about it, because it probably means your state has more people. But this is states that have anywhere from 1 person here to 9 people here. 10 to 25 participants from Arizona, Florida, Ohio, and Oregon. So most of us are in fact from out of state. California has 38. Illinois, hugely delightful, wonderful gains there, 45. Texas, which many, many years has been our biggest, and my apologies to you Texans, but both numbers-wise and geographically, you are not the biggest. Because, in fact, I made an error in my PowerPoint and I copied a wrong slide. We have 78 from Texas, 88 from Washington, severe omission, but I've already honored some of the Alaskans here, 98 from Alaska, and from Kansas, 157. Now, full disclosure here, 139 or so of those are from Wichita Public Schools, but we also have some other Kansas districts and people from the State Department of Kansas. So truly a pleasure to have you all with us. Some specific districts that sent fairly large numbers of people, you'll see posted up here. And again, two districts that serve relatively small numbers of children in huge, vast geographic areas are Lower Yukon, Alaska, and Northwest Arctic Borough District. And then just kind of finishing out this introduction to who all of us are in this room, we do have 8 paraeducators. And for those of you, for those of you who know less about my work and this background, I actually started as a paraeducator about 8 miles from where we are, the school that is closest to Portland Airport. I was 19 years old. I had no intention of going into education. I simply needed a job. I got hired in a program for severely emotionally disturbed kids that was housed in a regular elementary school, but it served about a 50,000 student population. All of the East Side districts were a consortium together. This was the fall of 1971. And in the fall of 1971, I started learning on my second day of the job how to do systematic direct instruction. what we now call explicit instruction. I started to learn systematic behavior analysis, which, by the way, the science of behavior analysis, which all positive behavior support is based on, simply means this: screw around with some variables and hope you get lucky. If you don't like the behavior of a group or of an individual kid, do something differently about the setting that surrounds that kid and see if you'll have a positive impact. I started to learn that on my second day on the job. Most of this work is not new work. It was starting to be researched even 40 plus years ago, and the research base has just grown and grown, more rich and more depth to say, we know what we need to do, we're just not real good about doing it every single day. And that's what this work is about. It's not about buying a book that goes on a shelf. It's not about hiring a consultant that comes in and gets your staff to laugh a lot. It's about how do we improve the quality of the minute-by-minute work that's going on. Other job roles that we have here. Instructional coaches, 39. And this, by the way, is not going to add up to the 640 because a number of people when they register don't tell us what their job role is. So these are of the people who we know what their job roles are. Range of district administrators from superintendents of schools to deputy superintendents, assistant superintendents, chief academic officers, etc. Interventionists, we lump together psychs, social workers, counselors, not that they are all the same, but in the degree to which they are hopefully supporting teachers and supporting children, they have some similarities of sharing strategies and so on. Wonderfully, we have a significant number of building principals. And as somebody who has spent his life doing school improvement work, I'm sorry, principals, but it really comes all down to the quality of your commitment and your follow-through, that you are not just throwing training at people, but we're providing the support to see that that training works. And all of those roles, and including mine, are all to support these people here. We have 204 teachers. And everything that we are about, all of the infrastructure, from the paraeducators to the superintendent of schools, is to try to help protect and ensure quality interactional minutes between you and your children. And that'll be a major theme that runs through the overt part of my keynote, which I'll get to in just a moment, and that Anita is going to help me with. But we also have a range here of just levels of experience with safe and civil schools, with CHAMPs, foundations, interventions, etc. For example, I was talking to two charming gentlemen early on this evening who are from Mississippi, and I asked their permission to mention our conversation. They're from Starkville, Mississippi, which I didn't know where that was, but they immediately said Mississippi State, and that is the claim to fame. And here's why they're here. Somebody in their central office is very enthused about safe and civil schools work. The middle school that their kids, they're a fifth grade school, 350 students, all fifth graders, which is an interesting structure. The school that their 350 children are going to feed into is doing some CHAMPs, and they're not sure how extensively, but they've heard positive things about it. So they're kind of on one end of the spectrum. This seems promising. This might be worthwhile, so let's investigate it. And those of you who are in that position, we actively invite you to have a healthy dose of skepticism, because there's way too many programs out there that are just that, and we want you to talk to colleagues, because there's also a lot of people here with a range of implementation experience. And I'm going to give you a couple of examples of that, but first I'm going to put you to work just a little bit. In just a moment, I'm going to ask that you talk to people at your table, and if you know all of the people at your table, lean over to another table. I want you to talk to some people from a district that is not your district. Now, that may be hard for you Wichitans, because 1 out of 5 of us are from Wichita. But I'd like you to take just 2 or 3 minutes, and I'd like you to talk about why you're here. Is it because your district is deeply embedded in this and you're trying to further that work? Is it because you're just in exploratory stages? And let me tell you how I'm going to bring you back. And this is probably unnecessary to teach, given that we have so many people who are familiar. But one of the things that we are about as a cultural ritual within CHAMPS is a teacher ought to be able to get the attention of any group back, regardless of the activity structure, in less than 5 seconds. There's a range of attention signals that people can use, but the one I'm going to use is simply, may I have your attention, please? Many of you will not see, nor will you hear that signal, and don't feel at all like you have to look for it or listen to it. Because enough people will see or hear the signal, and when they see or hear the signal, they will stop talking and raise their hands. And I think you'll see that probably 500 of us in this room here tonight can get quiet in less than 5 seconds. But I want you to take 3 or 4 minutes, meet a few other people, find out why they're here, find out where they're from. 3 or 4 minutes, get to know some folks. And if I could have your attention, please. Thank you so very, very much. And go back to your seats, if you would, please. And that, by the way, was right at 5 seconds. That was 500 of us. And something that Anita and I are both very big on is maximizing instructional time. And we'll both talk about that a little bit more later. So there's a range of people here. And I thought I would just mention a few things from a few of the districts who are here. First of all, Northwest Arctic Borough School District really has just completed their first full year of a level of implementation. They brought their, I think almost all of their administrative team last year, and we're exploring, is this something we're going to do? They got very into it. They did it very, very well. And they've had very significant reductions of out-of-school suspensions in only 1 year. Also, Roger Franklin is principal of one of the schools, and Roger, Anita Archer, in conjunction with Safe and Civil, did an earlier training of trainers on explicit instruction for us in June, and Roger and some of the other Northwest Arctic Borough people were there, and both my son, Matt, who's with Safe and Civil Schools, who's running the video camera tonight and does sort of all the organizational stuff of our business, and my daughter Jessica were there supporting Anita's work. And they both came back and separately told me, oh my gosh, Roger Franklin is just so excited about what's been happening, and suggested I get in touch with Roger. So Roger and I have emailed a little bit in the last couple of weeks, and also talked just this afternoon. And this is just one school in the district, and Roger very much wanted to make clear this is not about Roger Franklin. This is about just the work and the level of commitment in that district. But the school, the community where Roger is Shungnak, and forgive me if I'm mispronouncing Shungnak. Thank you. Thank you for Shungnak. Shungnak. Thank you. Okay. And correct me when I blow it again, Roger. Shungnak. He basically described, and very respectfully, but he basically described that prior to this year, the school and the community was bordering on complete chaos. That they had gone through something like 5 principals in two years, and that not only were the children kind of running the school, they were running wild in the community as well. And they grabbed a hold of CHAMPS, and just by way of background, Roger is a world-class runner. And he really looked at CHAMPS and has described to me several times, this is like running. You have to keep working a little bit harder at it, and you have to do it every day, and you have to do it a little bit further and a little bit better. And that with that work, they have truly turned things around in that community. And in fact, one of the things last year that we did get gentle criticism from the Northwest Arctic Borough folks for is my trainers and I use lots of driving examples, because driving examples are fabulous, because there's a set of rules, there's a set of things that you're supposed to do, and so they're fabulous. But the problem is, in many of their communities, they don't have cars, quite literally. There are children who have never ridden in cars. Now, I don't know if that's the major mode of transportation, but it is one of the pictures that Roger sent me about this community. And they so grabbed a hold of this that they have is it a mining company, Roger? A mining company that is a major employer in the area, and that from that mining company they come and they when they visit the community, they pretty much have to stay in the school because there are no motels in these communities. So they stay in the schools, they visit the schools, and so on. This is to the superintendent of schools, Dr. X, some excerpts of this letter from a representative of the mining company. As a project manager, I've been engaged in this visitation process since 2008 and have become somewhat familiar with some of the staff and the ebb and flow of activities in Upper Kobuk, thank you, Roger, Upper Kobuk schools. I wouldn't normally be inclined to write such a note, but after my visit this week, I was particularly struck by the positive change in attitude and leadership at Shungnak. Thank you. About 20, 30 corrected repetitions. I'll have it down, Roger. As you are aware, Shungnak School over the last few years had experienced some difficulty in their efforts to maintain control of the students as well as to deal with the myriad of other social and educational issues. My short visits to the school don't allow me to see the full spectrum of issues and how they're being dealt with, but I can say that there is a marked difference in the mood and vibe at Shungnak this week over last fall's visit. Students seem to respect their teachers, and teachers have better control of their classes. That, by the way, is out of 8 teachers, 5 who this year were brand new, first year, never taught before teachers. So right there, think about that, of having any school that has 70% of the staff as all first year teachers. I attribute much of this to the leadership of Principal Roger Franklin and his staff, and Roger wanted me to make very clear, this is not about him, it is about his staff having embraced all that. I just wanted to pass on to you that I think they're doing a great job out there of reestablishing order and creating a positive learning environment, what could have been described as rock bottom in 2012. In addition to that, a State Department mentor wrote some of these notes, and I'll show you some visuals that Roger sent me. It is now the beginning of the second semester at Shungnak School. This is my 4th site visit since 2012. One significant change that I have observed as a mentor is the consistency in which teachers are implementing the CHAMPS behavioral program in their classrooms. It has taken time and effort on their part, and it appears to be having a significant positive benefit for each of their classroom environments. The fact that the building administrator, Roger Franklin, has set this as one of his high priorities, and the fact that his staff members are working with great fidelity and consistently implementing this behavioral approach is a testament to how a true team of educators can accomplish so much in a relatively short period of time. Another positive tone that is set every day is the morning assembly meetings with the students and staff members in the gymnasium. It is a meet and greet celebration to start the day. It is also a time when visitors to the school who are in attendance can be introduced and welcomed by the school. Mr. Franklin often gives a positive pep talk about being responsible learners and shares the message of keeping personal pride in being a member of Shungnak Community School. He often selects a student to come down and lead the school-wide Pledge of Allegiance in both English and Inupiaq. Thank you. The students from kindergarten up have learned to line up and walk to their classrooms quietly from assembly without needing the direct supervision of teachers, which is wonderful modeling on the students' parts. All these implementations set a positive tone in the school for social development and personal responsibility. That's in 1 year, folks. Roger, please stand, but this is to your whole staff, to the whole staff. Come on, Roger. Thank you. Thank you. So those of you who are newer to this work, what I want to say to you is, don't piecemeal it. If you're not ready to do it seriously, wait another year. Get the readiness, because it really is a key of getting the whole staff on board with this. And Roger even took it to the point of involving the community and setting strategic plan for what are we doing as a community. And it's just so exciting to hear that work and to hear somebody like Roger talk about he feels that after this first year being so successful, they're really just at the foundational level. Because this does have to be every day a little bit better. Now, we also have districts like Wichita, and Wichita I've told you a little bit about already, but I will tell you it is an absolute model of cooperation between the State Department of Education and the school district. The degree of vertical alignment of the school district leaders about this work and embracing Anita's work as well, but also recognizing this cannot be a quick fix. This has to be, particularly in a district of the size of Wichita. It takes time to get everybody on board. A similar district, I don't know whether they're here yet or not. Oh, there's the Fresno crew. Good. I was hoping to see you guys. Hi, Lisa. Hi, Erica. Fresno is just wrapping up year 5. Is that correct? I'd hope to see you before to verify that number. But an amazing level of implementation in an 80,000 student district that serves 80% poverty. And they have huge challenges. Their out-of-school suspensions are reduced by about 50% over that 5 years. And in a school that is a very, very tough urban district, that is not an insignificant number by any means. They also, by the way, were so gracious at letting us utilize Fresno as a formalized research project. And so we now are, those of you who are newer to this stuff, we are actually, Safe and Civil Schools is listed on NREP, the National Registry of Evidence-Based Programs and Practices. And that was several studies, but the linchpin of that was the study that was done in Fresno. And later this year, I don't know what issue, but in School Psych Review, there will be a detailed analysis of that research project. And thank you to Fresno for letting us work with you in researching that. I also listed 2 districts who are back here again, Carolyn Novelli from Duval and Karen and Laura from A-Leaf. Karen and Laura, I didn't see you. Have you arrived yet? Okay, they haven't gotten in yet. They're getting in later tonight, or they're just coming for later in the week. A-Leaf and Duval have been doing this work, Foundations and Champs, for 11 and 12 years respectively. In Duval, that has been across 5 superintendent changes. And it's not easy, but they have truly stayed the course. That's a 130,000 student district in Duval County. And they have stayed the course. This is part of the common language of the district. And that is part of what this work is about. For those of you who are newer to this work, CHAMPS is about clarity of expectations. But to give you a sense of some of the power of common language, CHAMPS is really just an acronym for 5 things that we need to teach kids very directly about every setting that they're in. Teacher-directed instruction, independent seat work, cooperative groups. And since my friend and colleague, Dr. Anita Archer, would probably kick me in the shins if I don't do at least some explicit whole group responses, those of you who know what the acronym CHAMPS stands for, we're going to start just with the C. And when I give the signal, I want just the C, but the letter C, nice, bold, and loud, stands for? Conversation. Thank you. And the H stands for? Help. And the A stands for? Activity. And the M stands for? Movement. And the P is actually the most important. That we be absolutely clear with students about what does it take to demonstrate participation. How do you participate and how do you demonstrate that you are participating? And if we do all of those, it leads to success. And here's something that I never dreamed when I first wrote CHAMPS, that it would become a district approach to things. I was just writing it as a book to help individual teachers improve their own classroom management plans, and it's just been hugely gratifying to see districts that have become committed to this as an approach. And so some part of what this is about is developing some common language within your district, but it's also about trying to create a broader sense of community. And we're going to be asking for your help in doing that beyond geographic limitations. And my staff is pushing me, kicking and screaming, into the 21st century. And we actually, in the folder, you don't need it now, but in the folder that you picked up when you registered, there's a little card that looks like the card that I have there. And we are going to encourage that you hashtag your best ideas with #PBIS or #MTSS, and that you hash them so that we start building a way of sharing best ideas. For example, my first tweet that I am sending, as a 61-year-old man who is highly resistant to doing this, that I am sending says this: Safe and Civil Schools is launching the concept of 90% thresholds, which is going to be what the bulk of this talk together tonight is about. Setting the concept of 90% thresholds is a way to set priorities for improving both MTSS and PBIS. So, there. Now, I know, isn't that huge? But here's what I really want to say to you. We really hope to start networking best ideas and making that easy for you to do. And so, for example, one that I'm going to send later is one that I learned from an Alaskan last year. It's actually a middle school teacher from Anchorage. She had a fabulous idea. She taught champs voice levels. And one of the things she did is she just laminated little cards, a red card with a 0, little laminated, probably 3-inch by 3-inch. A different color card with a 1, 2, 3, and whenever she's wandering around during cooperative groups or independent work and the noise is getting a little bit louder and it should be a voice level 2, which is just quiet conversational voices, she just simply holds up the number 2, which is just a reminder without her needing to say anything or stop the groups or shush them down, and she said immediately the groups get back to an appropriate voice level. We want you sharing those kinds of ideas because it is those sorts of pragmatic ideas that make all the difference. And as just a cheap little behavioral ploy to encourage you to do that during this week, here's what we really want you to do. We want you to share your best ideas that you hear from colleagues, that you have learned by your own experimentation to be supporting this kind of work, and we want you to tweet those. We will give away an iPad mini at the end of the week to the best of those ideas. We will also give away, the second iPad mini will go to the best takeaway. In other words, if you're in a session and you hear a great idea from a trainer or another participant, tweet that. At Safe and Civil Schools Conference, just learn blah, 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 and we're going to give away an iPad for that. Our hope is that that's just a little bit of a motivator to get you to do this. Our true hope is that we start creating a community where you will not have to wait until the next revision of Champs to hear the next best ideas. So please consider sharing that. Here's what the main content of tonight is about. We are launching this idea of 90% thresholds as a way of saying, especially to those districts who are implementing, are you really getting the results out of implementation that you should? So, final thing, and then we'll head into that content. I do just want to thank the partners that I get to work with, Dr. Bill Jensen, Dr. Anita Archer, and now with Pacific Northwest Publishing, Dr. Hill Walker, because we'll now have access to a major universal screening device. You'll get more information about that a little bit later. So here's the keynote for tonight. And by the way, this video is going to be available, so if you want to share any of it with colleagues, you're welcome to do so. Also, we will make this PowerPoint available to you. So vision, implementation, and 90% thresholds. Let me tell you how I came up with this. I came up with this idea for this reason. A couple of months ago, I was reflecting, I need to get ready for my keynote, and my keynote is always a challenge that you as teachers have every single day, and it is this. You have some students who already know and understand the concept at a very, very deep level and need no instruction whatsoever, and you have other students who are completely naive to what you're trying to teach. How can you do something that differentiates enough to create a relevance for that? And I came upon this quote from Thomas Edison that I really liked a lot. Vision without execution is hallucination. And I would hazard that almost all of your districts have a vision or mission statement that says something about all students or every child. Am I right? Here's the problem. When we every day are struggling with some of those all students or every child, that ends up just becoming words on paper if we aren't careful. If we're not working to create that vision, then it's like, oh yeah, all students, every child. But that vision of all students and every child truly is the blessing of getting to do this work. And so we don't want that to happen. So I really liked this because it does come down to the issue of execution. Now this is slightly off task, but you'll just have to bear with me for just a couple of minutes. I therefore started to do some Google searches for Thomas Edison and execution. And here's what I found. This is really this is the off-task part, but this is really distressing. Execution without a noble vision can create crazy behavior. Here's why. Edison wanted the U.S. to adopt direct current, the kind of electrical technology, that the electrical delivery that they have in Europe and so on. Westinghouse and a couple of others really wanted alternating current. They won. It became alternating current. And after the industry was already heading in that direction, Edison went a little bit nuts. And in order to show how misguided this decision was, he started electrocuting animals with alternating current. Look what you've done. Look at how dangerous this is. He even executed an elephant, and on film. It's disturbing. It's one of the first videos that was movies that was ever done. It's out there. I watched it. And once I watched it, I could not get out of my head vision and execution, and I keep seeing this elephant being electrocuted. It's like, this isn't going to work. Okay, so here's where I went from there. I basically said, we can't use the word execution, so let's talk implementation. And so from this point forward, we're not going to talk about executing anybody, all right? But we are going to talk about bridging the gap between vision and the current reality, and that has to be through implementation of good practices. We've known what those practices are for well over 40 years, folks. How do we get it to happen? So, first of all, vision. I look at a lot of school mission statements and vision statements. And I've just collapsed. And I love mission vision statements. I'm not knocking them at all. But I've collapsed a range. And I think what all of us are about are trying to make your school be the perfect place for the great, vast range of children that you serve. You want your school to be a great place for the most talented students, and that it challenged them, and that it pushed them forward, and that it helped make them generous and whole and graciously spirited people with all of their talents. You do want your school to be a fabulous place for the most average students who will never be outstanding at anything. They will never be the star of the play, the captain of the team, etc. Probably not even on the honor roll. And I think one bit of the low-hanging fruit in many school districts is the children who come every day just putting in their time. We want our school to be a great place that challenges those 80 to 90% kids. But then also it needs to be a great place for those children with the significant challenges. And there is no doubt that whether it's Newport Mesa in California, whether it's New York City, whether it's Seminole Tribes, whether it's North Arctic Borough, you have children with very serious, substantial challenges. The tough to teach are not easy to teach. That's why we call them tough to teach. So, Safe and Civil Schools, our mission is this. Here's what we're going to be about throughout this week, is trying to help you, and this is our mission statement, and has been for many years. Our responsibility is to do everything in our power to help adults create environments for children that are emotionally and physically safe and that foster independence, integrity, confidence, self-control, kindness, literacy, and responsibility in those children. Our goal is to help you take your most talented, your most average, and your most challenging students and help them become all of those things. I do, by the way, just want to clarify one thing. There is a huge movement on social-emotional learning in this country that is fabulous, but there are some people that go, oh, we're doing social-emotional learning, so we don't need to do something like positive behavior support. That truly is like saying, since we're teaching reading, we need not teach math. They're different. They're different subjects. But the positive behavior support end of things is about helping adults create environments that make it easy for kids to exhibit the skills that you're teaching them in a good social-emotional curricula like Second Steps or something else. So we're about trying to make the environment better. And bridging between vision and implementation, I think, requires some measurable objectives, and here's where this 90% threshold comes in. First of all, one definition of threshold is the level at which effect starts. In other words, it is not the goal, it is the level at which we might get some bang for the buck here. So, what do I mean by these levels? I'm going to briefly discuss, and Anita is going to embellish on one of the most important one, 5 different levels. I'm going to breeze through these. You have access to this. Well, you can get this PowerPoint. Don't worry about writing it down. I'm going to breeze through these quickly, then I'm going to come back and talk about each of them in just a touch more detail. The first of these is every family, meaning every school helping every family, help their children attend at least 90% of school days, and not just attend, but attend on time and ready to learn. The second of these is every administrator ensuring that at least 90% of school minutes are instructional minutes minus lunch. That's a huge challenge. If you've got 50-minute periods and 5-minute passing periods, that means we have no additional time to waste at all, because that's 10% right there. Every teacher utilizing at least 90% of instructional minutes for instructional activities. That also is a huge, daunting challenge, but it means looking at your schedule and looking at your transitions. Again, I'll go into more detail on each of these in a moment. At least 90% of students engaged during every instructional activity, and every student engaged at least 90% of the instructional minutes. Meaning, if I've got a classroom of 30 kids, and I always have 2 kids who are off task, I'm above the 90% level. But if it's always Randy and Carolyn who are off task, then we still have work to do. In other words, these are basically saying, let's help identify where we need to be putting our staff development time, effort, and energy. So let me embellish on these just a little bit. So bridging between vision and implementation requires measurable objectives. All of those things are measurable. And this concept of 90% thresholds, 90% is not the goal, but rather below 90% is a red flag that needs to be addressed. Above 90%, maintain universal procedures. But let me embellish on that for just a minute. If you are already in pretty good shape in terms of these numbers, here is a risk that you have. Your staff could start going, oh, we don't need to teach behavioral expectations anymore because these kids are fine. Well, you want to know why they're fine? It's because of the time, effort, and energy that your staff has been putting in every year and renews every single year to teaching their expectations. So if it's above 90%, we need to protect it. We need to maintain those universal, but we also need to have to stretch out and grow for those children with the most significant challenges. How can we adapt these procedures, targeted and intensive interventions? But anytime we're below 90% on these, we need to be thinking about what are we doing at a universal level? What are we doing with all of our staff, with all of our kids? Okay, so let's talk about these thresholds. The first one, every family helping children attend at least 90% of school days. Those of you who were with me for the keynote last year or heard me in the last year, forgive me for this being a repeat. I always used to say this: if your school is at 95% average daily attendance, you're probably fine. In looking at this more deeply, though, you can be at 95% average daily attendance and still have well over 15% of your kids who are chronically absent, meaning gone more than 10% of the school days. Average daily attendance is it's a smoke screen. It can make us complacent. It made me complacent for many, many years. You have to look at 20 days into school, you should look at every kid who has 2 absences or more and go, this kid is on a trajectory for failure and dropping out of school if this trend continues. And you can do that 20 days into school. And 90%, again, is not the goal. That's just the threshold. That's the red flag. Do you realize that a kid could be at 90% attendance, which means in a 180-day year missing 18 days of instruction? That's a month of school. That's not the goal. That's anything below that is crisis level proportions. And then beyond that, we want to help every family attend every day that they're not physically sick and on time and ready to learn. Now, just to frame how this fits in this conference, some of you are going to sessions that are going to be talking a lot about climate. And to encourage good attendance, you have to have a positive climate. It is a logical absurdity to think we will ever be able to punish children into coming to school. It's just a logical absurdity. It has to be an environment where kids want to come. And some things that will help you do that within Safe and Civil Schools, foundations, champs, discipline in the secondary classroom. But also I've had the wonderful privilege in the last year of working actively with my dear friend and colleague, Dr. Bill Jensen, on a process for functional behavior assessment for attendance and truancy, and an interventions book for truancy that'll be coming out in about a month. And I'm very, very excited about those because I think it is a grossly underlooked at behavior. So those are going to be available within about a month. Just a quick example of that. In working on this, my wife, who wrote the Read Well curriculum, those of you in Wichita, it's the implementation in kindergarten, is actually the First Nations schools of British Columbia adopted it for all of their First Nations school. There was one school that was making very little progress. Marilyn asked them about their attendance. One classroom that had 14 kids had 2 kids who were absent almost 50% of the days, and all of the other 12 kids were at something like 70% average daily attendance. We encouraged the teacher to set up a simple little plan that just said this: any day that 12 of your 14 children are in attendance, the group gets a point. When the group gets 5 points, the group gets a mystery motivator, which is a delightful concept from Bill Jensen and his colleagues. An envelope, they don't know what's in it. It could be, it's a letter to your parents. It could be a sort of a grab bag thing. It's a random, not very low cost reward, no cost rewards. For the first 8 days, and we unfortunately didn't get the data for the rest of the year. This is just in the last 4 weeks of school, by the way. Her first 8 days of implementation, every one of those 8 days, she had 12 or 13 kids who came. This is all we're talking about, is making this an issue, being positive with the families, being positive with the kids. This is kindergarten level. This was done with the kids. The kids so then wanted to come to school because they wanted to be part of their group getting this point. And there's potentially very, very powerful interventions if we can figure out when and how to implement them. So a second threshold. Every administrator ensuring that at least 90% of school minutes are instructional minutes. This is actually difficult to achieve, especially in secondary schools. Because as I previewed for you already, if you have 50-minute class periods and 5-minute passing periods, that's right there is your 10% limit. That means we cannot have kids who are coming tardy, because if they're coming tardy, they're missing instructional minutes. And we, by the way, so administrators, the goal here is that you are protecting instructional minutes for your teachers. Some examples of kinds of things: foundations, start on time. Start on time is just a simple little program for secondary schools that has gotten up to 96% reductions in tardiness. In communities like the real but unfortunately named South Park High School in Buffalo, New York, got 96% reductions in tardiness and have maintained that now for 2.5 years. One of our schools that we've gotten to work with in Fresno, California, Sunnyside High School, 3,300, 3,400 students, also got a 96% reduction in tardiness. Do you realize if your school has lots of kids tardy, your teachers quit teaching the first 5 minutes of class? They don't bother to teach in the first 5 minutes of class because there's too many disruptions of kids coming in late. If you've got 5-minute passing periods and 5 minutes of teachers not teaching because tardiness is so rampant, you've got a huge amount of school-wide work that you have to do. A third threshold: every teacher using at least 90% of instructional minutes for instructional activities. This is also very hard to achieve. Charles Payne did some wonderful research in the city of Chicago where they identified teachers who got phenomenal academic, all of the teachers who got phenomenal academic achievement gain, and all the teachers got very poor academic achievement gain. They then sent researchers in to look at their use of instructional time. The teachers in the top half of Chicago Public Schools, and we're talking thousands of teachers here, averaged 14% of classroom minutes were non-instructional. These are good teachers, and the median was 14%. So they have to ramp it up a little bit. We're talking transitions, housekeeping details, wrapping up at the end of the period, 14% of minutes. You know where teachers in the bottom half were? 29% of classroom minutes were non-instructional, handing things in, passing things out, taking attendance. That's a huge loss of instructional time. And all of those first three are basically designed to do this. We want kids in class, on time, for relevant instructional activities. Skip past this, bear with me just a moment. So that the next threshold is at least 90% of students engaged during every single instructional activity. And this also, Anita, when I first showed this to her, said, you know, that's really challenging. I said, I know it is, Anita, but you achieve it. And it's true. And we all need to become Anita. We all need to become so good with our instruction that we're grabbing kids throughout those instructional minutes. And the goal is highly engaging lessons with all students participating. So what are we doing with the whole class? The first three thresholds are all about let's protect instructional minutes for our teachers to have time to interact productively with kids. The final of these thresholds is going to be, these are some of the training things that you'll be going through in order to help create that active engagement. The final threshold is every single student engaged at least 90% of the time. Everybody, I want you to picture a couple of the toughest kids that you work with. Now unclench your jaw. Relax a little bit. If you don't have that kid next year, say, God bless you and goodbye. But you'll have another. Someone will come to fill his place. And this is now about what are we going to do to stretch to try to reach those children? And again, the goal is not the threshold. The threshold is below which is a red flag. The goal is every student being empowered with the skills to stay focused, persevere, and achieve mastery. In other words, if you think about what employers want from our public schools, they want basic literacy, they want problem solvers, but 90% of what they want is they want people who arrive on time, who work hard, who stay focused, and have the self-discipline to stay focused. So just some of the range of tools that we have within Safe and Civil Schools and Tough Kid material are a full range of things to try to assist you with those, and a number of the trainings like Mike Boer doing work with My Interventions training, Dr. Jensen doing work with the Tough Kid material. Later, just as a preview, another delightful thing of getting to work with Bill Jensen, we're actually turning out a functional behavior assessment on bullying and a corresponding interventions book on bullying to try to assist you with these efforts. So this is all about trying to use these thresholds in order to set goals. And obviously to do that we need data, and there'll be a range of sessions later in the week about data. So I don't like my quote from Edison anymore because it involves the word execution. But I do want to share with you, as I'm heading towards wrapping this up, I do want to share with you one of my favorite quotes from Epictetus. First you say to yourself what you would be, then you do what you have to do. And as Roger said, you do it day after day, a little bit better. Now, before we close, I'm going to ask that you have just a quick, this will just be about 2 minutes. I want you to have a discussion at your table. What do you think of these 90% thresholds? Which are going to be the most challenging within your schools or districts? Which are ones that you think you already are fairly strong on? because that will help guide what you want to accomplish this week. So 2 or 3 minutes, then I'll bring you back. I will wrap this up. Thank you very, very much. Okay, let me head towards wrapping this up. If our goal is every student empowered with the skills to stay focused, persevere, and achieve mastery, and if the Epictetus quote says, first you say to yourself what you would be, well, your mission statement of your school says what you would be, and it probably says something about all students and every child, or every child. And that can't just be words on paper. That has to be what we're about. And bridging that gap, I hope the concept of 90% thresholds might help bridge that gap. I also hope the kinds of tools, strategies, et cetera, that you are going to be getting in the trainings that you'll be sharing with colleagues will help you with that as well. Just a couple of final logistic things. Please remember the Twitter contest. Help us out with that if you would. And we can become a network of just sharing good ideas. Tomorrow and every other day, sessions will start promptly at 8:30. And having written a program called Start on Time, I do from this point forward feel neurotically obligated to start on time. Breakfast will be in each of your meeting rooms, so your schedule should have told you which rooms you're going to be in. Breakfast will be in the rooms. Lunches are provided as part of your registration, and there'll basically be 4 buffet lines out here, and we're going to stagger the sessions just slightly, so hopefully none of you are in lines for very long. And I will ask that you join us in the room right next door for a hosted reception and get to know us and some other people. Thank you so very, very much for attending. Thank you. Thank you.